Hello to all of you and welcome to our new webinar, which is part of the webinar series De-Westernizing Media Literacy, Perspectives on Pedagogies, Practices and Theories of Media Education. We'll have 6 one-hour webinars included in this series, and this is a continuation of 2 previous webinar series. One that started by focusing on the Nordic countries in Finland, Denmark and Norway, and another that presented an outlook on 8 European countries. And now our aim is to widen our perspective by looking at regions beyond the Nordics and beyond Europe and the Western world. De-Westernizing in this context means asking how to remain cultural sensitive when forming theories, practices and policies about media literacy, or media and information literacy, MIL. We have seen that it's truly important to recognize that our worldviews are constructed in different ways, in different cultural spheres and in different societal systems. And accordingly, the pedagogical approaches need to be adjusted to these perspectives. My name is Maarit Jaakkola and I'm the co-director of Nordicom, a Center for Nordic Media Research at the University of Gothenburg in Sweden, and I'll be your host today. The Arabic region is a very diverse region, covering very different countries and cultures, and we are today not suggesting that it could be covered within one hour webinar, of course. But we have picked 3 examples, 3 countries that we want to showcase today. For us in the Nordics, I guess when thinking of Arabic countries and Arabic region, we who are born in the Nordics and whose mother tongue is a Nordic language, we don't know that much about Arabic speaking countries and their media cultures. And that applies, of course, to many other areas in the world. But one challenge is always the language. We who are not able to follow the original messages in original languages, we cannot get through this language wall and be able to follow the media. We are always we have to rely on second-hand sources. On the other hand, there are large diasporic communities. The Arabic-speaking minorities have been growing, for example, here in Sweden. And to take an example, within the most popular 10 YouTube channels, at least 2 are run in Arabic. There's a beauty vlog and a family vlog. The Arabic sphere and the Arabic culture and the Arabic language in all its variants has come closer to us, and we are curious about knowing more. But however, today we are talking about the original cultures and countries, and we have 3 examples: the United Arab Emirates, Iran and Morocco. And we have 3 speakers, 3 presentations, and highlighting lessons learned from these countries. And as usual, we will speak of both policy and practices and related media literacy research. After each presentation, we'll have a little time for questions and answers. So if you have any questions in mind, you can write them down to the chat box and we'll pick them up from there. But now we'll start with Maha Bashri. Maha Bashri is Associate Professor of Communication at the United Arab Emirates University, and she has also completed her doctorate at the School of Journalism and Mass Communication, University of South Carolina. And she has also been Associate Professor in Illinois, the US. Her research interests deal with, for example, the politics of technology and digital literacy and citizenship and social movements. And recently, Maha has co-edited a book titled Minority Woman and the Media, Challenging Representations and Articulating New Voices, which sounds very interesting. And today she'll talk about media literacy competencies in the United Arab Emirates. Please, Maha, you are welcome.
Thank you so much, Marit. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for having me today. So I'm going to give a brief presentation since we have 10 minutes that focuses on a study that we started in 2018 and continue to work on now or expand on now in the United Arab Emirates. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. Give me 1 second here. Share, hold on. For some reason, and this is why we do not like technology. Share screen, let's see. There we go. Okay, can you see my screen before I start? Yes? Okay, perfect. So today I am going to be speaking about departures and intersections in media and information literacy. And the case study that we're going to be looking at is the UAE. Now, when we talk about competencies and media and information literacy and digital literacy around the world, we seem to think of, or we seem to approach it from the perspective of silos. For example, this region, that region, does it this way, this region has these issues. That is true. But in our research, we're trying to look at where the UAE as a country actually has its own context and where it also intersects with previous literature and previous research and previous contexts in other countries that have more established media information literacy programs. So the overview here, when we start talking about media and information literacy, we need to approach it from the perspective of a new media environment, especially when it comes to looking at youth, young people around the world. Young media consumers tend to be very vulnerable because they do have the digital skills, but they don't necessarily have the critical analysis skills. And this is where we tend to see issues. So globally, wherever you are around the world, be it in the Arab world, be it in the Northern Hemisphere, be it in parts of Africa, globally youth use new media more than any other sector or any other demographic in society. So they're really, really adept at using the new media. But again, as I said earlier, they don't necessarily have the critical evaluation skills when it comes to the information or the content itself. So this is why we see a lot of the disinformation, misinformation campaigns and the strategies and the fake news, the concept of fake news that has taken the world by storm in the last, let's say, 5 to 6 years. So our research explores media and information literacy competencies among millennials, people who are born like from 2000 onwards in the UAE, because there's an increasing importance of media literacy skills, as I said, due to the rapid changes in the media environment and due to the fact that the UAE has a growing, young population that is going to college now. It's a very young country that's been around for the past 50 years, conceived in 1971. The university has not, their first university was, again, established in 1973. So it's fairly new, and this concept or the concept of media and information literacy programs is not necessarily embedded in the curriculum and in the culture itself. There is limited research in the Middle East and in the Gulf region in particular when it comes to MIL, but it's growing now, and there is more attention to it when it comes both from the academic side and the policy side. Again, given the fact that we have a huge proliferation of new media as well as all the misinformation, disinformation that we're seeing, the content that we're seeing, in outlets around the world. So there is a need for research because, as I said earlier, there's a lack of media and information literacy education in the UAE. The UAE is rated worldwide, globally, in the latest indexes as the second best education system in the Arab world. However, programs that primarily or specifically focus on media and information literacy education are new, or it's a new concept that is not necessarily part of what has been done in the curriculum traditionally. So again, going back to our users, to the youth, young users here are vulnerable to the onslaught of misleading information. But most importantly, they're vulnerable because they lack the critical thinking skills needed to assess the content that they're accessing. So they do have the skills. They know how to go ahead and get on Instagram. They know how to post. They're really good at that. They're really very tech savvy. But the actual analysis of what the content is about, or to critically evaluate the content, that's what's missing. This is the part of the puzzle that's missing for us. So the UAE as a country provides an important vantage point when it comes to studying the Arab world for two reasons. The first reason is the fact that it has a large Arab expat community that has been born and raised in the country. Hence, it tends to serve as a microcosm for the Arab world. You have people that, their parents were born here, their grandparents were born here. They're not necessarily Emiratis, but this is what they call home. So you're going to find pockets of people from Egypt, from Syria. You're going to find people from, let's say, Sudan. You're going to find people from Iran. It is a very diverse society that really mirrors a lot of countries within the region. Now, the second reason is, and this is where the departure comes, when we look at, the embedded idea in most people's minds is that because this is the Arab world, and because media and information literacy is a newly adopted concept or a newly adopted idea that is affecting both academia and policy, the UAE is different in the fact that it has one of the highest rates of internet penetration in the world, even better than some of the first world countries at 92%. And 40%, okay, this is where it gets tricky, 40% of the population is between the ages of 15 to 30. So you have a very young population that has access to the best infrastructure out there. And again, the other fact is that the UAE has, as I said earlier, a nascent educational system. It's a new country. It's only been, it's only 50 years old, and it lacks a tradition of established media and information literacy programs embedded in its curriculum and its culture. So for example, if we look at the first world, you do find that, let's say if we look at the North American example, you're going to find that media and information literacy programs have been embedded in the culture since the 1970s, in the curriculum since the 1970s. Moreover, you have a culture of literacy where, for example, your parents would read you a story before you go to bed. It's just part of what the culture is. It's a norm. That is not necessarily present here because you can have parents, not necessarily in this generation, but let's say grandparents, who are not literate, or they're illiterate, and therefore they were not able to have these practices with their children. So we are looking at, in our study, at media literacy from the lens of the ability to access, to analyze, to evaluate, and create media in a variety of forms. So digital and media literacy are both recognized as very important tools when it comes to youth, because it strengthens, if they have these competencies, this strengthens their civic participation because they understand the news and the content of the news, and therefore their contribution to their societies or their civic contribution tends to go up. There is a positive correlation between digital media literacy competencies and civic participation on the part of youth. And that is not only here, this is across the board, according to the literature. So our study employed the first part of our study. This is what I'm going to be talking about today because we don't have that much time. Employed a survey methodology to gauge literacy skills and examine news sources used by youth in the UAE. We had a questionnaire that was administered to a random sample in the university at UAU, which is the flagship, of undergraduate students. The sample size was 297, and they were all female students. Now you can ask me why female students, because that's predominantly, there are 10,000 students at UAU, 12,000 students at UAU, 10,000 of them are females, 2,000 are male students. So you can see that there is a huge difference between male and female students. And we opted to go with the females because, again, it was more of an issue of accessibility. So quickly through our findings, the majority of our participants, that's 61%, indicated that they don't really read hard news or actual news that deals with policy, with politics. And if they do, it's usually for less than 15 minutes a day. They're not reading the news. Furthermore, when they read the news, if they're reading news as a genre, they gravitate towards what we call soft news, and that's like social issues at 24.7%, entertainment 21 or 22%, and technology news. So they're really not into the civic part of news. They're more into what is entertainment. So amusing ourselves to death. We found that there's a significant correlation between reading habits and media literacy. The students who indicated on the survey that they read for a longer period of time over the course of a week tend to have better media literacy skills. So there was a correlation between these two level variables that indicated not necessarily a very strong correlation, but was a medium level relationship that we observed. Now, when asked about if they are aware of the term fake news, 32% of our respondents said yes. And that this was a huge concern for them because they receive a lot of their information via social media. But when you ask them, do you know if you've ever come across fake news, 40% said that sometimes. So they might be aware of the concept of what fake news is, but they don't necessarily understand what it really points to or what is fake news. What is a clear definition of what fake news is? So quickly for our discussion, the findings of this part of the study revealed that there is an acute lack of media literacy skills amongst the survey participants. They're digitally savvy, they know how to use the technology, but they don't necessarily know how to evaluate or analyze the information that they're getting through this technology. Findings also pointed to the fact that there is a need for more efforts to develop media literacy skills here amongst people, especially young people in this part of the world, in the UAE. And again, it goes back to two things. The fact that you don't have it embedded in the curriculum, there isn't a tradition of that. And at the same time, you don't have a tradition of reading necessarily within the society itself. So again, the intersection comes here in the fact that youth in the UAE share many attributes to their counterparts in the West. So, we do see that there is an issue of voter apathy, of civic disengagement in the West. For example, again, if we're looking at the North American example, amongst youth, voter participation tends to be really, really low. They're not really interested in what's going around them and policy change. They're more interested in, being glued to their screens, in amusing themselves by the information that they find, like on Instagram or, social media platforms. The same applies here in the UAE, but it's more intense because, again, at least in the, let's say in the North American example, the young people or youth did have or do have the benefit of the doubt because it was at some point embedded within their curriculum as they went through their schooling stages. It's not here. So the difference is there's a lack of embedded mill programs in the curriculum. And that again goes to the fact that it's a nascent educational system, as well as the fact that we are looking at a society that is growing at the same rate, or let's say there is the technology grew faster than changes in the society itself. In other words, that we've seen leaps and bounds when it comes to new media, the types of new media that we have. We have the best access. The accessibility here is one of the best in the world. But that does not go hand in hand with the educational system. And again, with changes in society. There isn't like the norm or the tradition of reading a story to your kids before you take them to bed. Libraries are not necessarily something that is very popular here, as it would. I'm not saying that it is over there. I mean, even there, it's an issue in parts of the first world, but still, there is that culture of let's go read. You need to read. Reading is an important part of what we do. That is a bit absent here. So that in a nutshell, I'm trying to go as quickly as possible to hit my 10 minutes. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to take them.
Thank you, Maha. Thank you for many insights. I like the comparisons between America and your country, because it makes it clearer what are the country specific traits and what are more generally shared between countries. So thank you for this short presentation. I know you have to be very quick and put together a lot of information into a very small package, but you made it very well. And I think if our audience has some questions, you may be free to ask, but I myself, I was thinking about the young literacy culture that you have and the young educational system. Couldn't you also say that if you have a young educational system, you don't have the burden of traditions, and you are more flexible in like integrating these kinds of new issues into the curriculum? You could also think that way, but that's obviously not the case in the curriculum. How do you assess how easy it would be to integrate these media and information literacy issues into the curriculum?
Well, there is a concerted effort now, especially at the university level, but we keep on telling them, because the research points to, you cannot bring people as freshmen, as first year students, and anticipate that because you have a program or 2 or 3 courses that they're going to pick up the skills. This needs to start way back when they're in kindergarten. To answer your question, yes, in most cases, it would make more sense because you are nascent, you're more likely to be wanting to experiment and all of that. But again, culture gets in the way here. Do remember that it tends to be more of a conservative culture that has to reconcile differences on the outside, again, with differences within the culture to conserve its, their own, I don't want to say Emirati culture, but it is, how do I explain this? It's just, what happened in the last 50 years, they have made so many strides when it comes to development, but changes in society, and we know that from a sociological aspect, wherever you go around the world, they don't go necessarily hand in hand with the changes that you have in the technology. And this is exactly what we have here. And as I said, you have parents who don't necessarily have that culture. This is embedded. You cannot expect that your schools are going to be doing everything for you. The home also has to support the school. You have to have parents that read for their kids. You have to have parents that buy books as gifts for their kids, that push the idea that reading is important. I know across the world, even I see it in my own kids, we say reading is important, we buy books, but are they reading? They are. in their own way, not necessarily the way I grew up reading, which was a book. They'd be on their phones, on their tablets, or whatever it is, but they're reading in their own way. Here, it's a bit different because you have parents who are not even aware of the different types of reading methods that you have or approaches to it. So I think that the government is very aware. Policy is happening. And I think Fuad was asking me what primary and secondary schools, they're implementing it now at the primary level here in Abu Dhabi as a, as an emirate, to have media and information literacy within the curriculum. So that is a start. But again, and I think the research supports what I'm saying. It's not the school, it's not only the school, it's not policy that can change things, or how people use, or how if people read or not. This needs to be supported by a cultural push by the society. This needs to be supported at home, and that's not necessarily happening here.
Okay, do you mean that, or it sounds like media and information literacy project, or the mission of MIL should be to educate everyone, also parents and adults, and not just focus on children?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
What do you think about the concept of digital natives then? Because I think you are talking about digital natives who are tech savvy, but maybe not always knowledgeable about the critical approaches to substance.
Well, we say in our, in that part of our research, we say that they're digital natives because they grew up, like we are the generation that grew up on television, for example. Perhaps our grandparents are the generation that grew up on radio. That's the technology that you grew up with. So you're really adept at it. You know how to use it. You know what you can extract from it. That's exactly what happens with them. They have the best accessibility, as I said. They have the best devices, and that's across the board, not only for Emiratis, but for the entire population, people who are here. You can find a cell phone at any price range, but it's still going to take you to WhatsApp and to any of the social media platforms. So everybody has accessibility. So they are really good at this because this is what they they open their eyes to, but they don't know necessarily what happens. How can I use this information that I'm getting? They can, and I see this in my classes and my courses. They can design the best Instagram page, but when it comes to the content itself, it really does not have that much substance to it. And you're saying you're not really you need to think audience-wise. What's going to attract them? It's not only about your moving GIFs or your moving animations. It is more about what are you trying to say? What's your objective? What are people going to try and get from this? When they go and read the news, they really have a hard time deciphering what's going on. And again, obviously our research is pointing to this, and other studies in the UAE point to the fact that these young people don't necessarily know how to evaluate the information. And I don't want to say the UAE as because I'm talking about them, that's why I'm focusing on them. But the literature also points, we have the same issues, for example, in the US. They're really good at going on the platforms, but do they understand what they're reading or the information that they're looking at or extracting?
That's true. That's true to many countries, and not only to UAE. How does UAE compare to other Arab countries? And you were talking about the expat community. Are they following content, if you think about their media habits, also beyond the UAE, or just following the UAE content, or is the whole Arabic world available to them because of high accessibility? Are there studies about their media uses?
You mean other parts of the Arab world? Yes, for example, Palestine, there are lots of studies that have, Jordan, they have lots of media information literacy studies. Jordan is very well known for its media and information literacy programs, really well, and the civic participation when it comes to youth. Here, there isn't really a difference, but the young people are exposed to media from all over the world. But I would say that they're, again, because news, as we know, news is local. Proximity really plays a role in what type of news you access. Even youth that are not necessarily Emirati, but Arab youth who are here tend to use local news outlets if they want to, get any piece of information. They are going to get it through the Al-Bayan, Al-Ittihad, which are, the newspapers or the big outlets that are available to them over here. So again, that goes to the fact that wherever you are, that's the type of news that, you're going to go, you tend to gravitate towards news from that place.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Maha. This was great and very interesting. And now it's time to go further. Our next speaker is Ali Reza Bastani, who is the founder of the Association of Iran Media Literacy, AIMEL, which is the first NGO in media literacy in Iran. And he has been active in journalism, especially in sports and political journalism. And he has worked, for example, as a sport program presenter and later been a political news anchorman at the public broadcaster IRIB in Iran. And he has also been teaching public relations and journalism at the Jain Scientific University for 15 years. And in addition, I read that he has been teaching Kyokushin karate for many years. So let's listen to Ali Reza Bastani. Please, the screen is yours.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, let me know if I'm sharing my PowerPoint is on screen. Okay, am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, you might click the presentation mode only. We see your slides, but if you click the button to the right, we can see it in presentation mode.
Okay. Okay, do you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you. Perfect.
Okay, let me start just by giving some information regarding to the organization, as you called the Association of Iran Media Literacy, which is called IMEL, AIMEL. Okay, let me tell you that the Association of Iran Media Literacy, or IMEL, founded and started its educational activities since 2017 through holding the seminars, webinars, and diverse workshops in the country. We have recently succeeded to sign a contract with the Ministry of Education in my country to develop the media literacy at schools, first by training the media literacy educators among the social studies teachers who are teaching actually right now at schools. And we are concentrating on making a type of cosmopolitan curriculum. But we have been deciding to make it for the high school students, writing the media literacy curriculum at all levels. We have been trying to talk to the authorities at the Ministry of Education that it is necessary to make the curriculum for all levels, from the primary school up to the high school levels, for all students to learn and to have the media literacy concept. We know that UNESCO defines media education as the primary priority field to the cultural educational development in the 21st century. Nowadays, media education has become a crucial education in many countries. But all of them has been in the academic level, not for the schoolers, not for the students at high schools or other levels at schools. If we consider the 20th century as the period of theoretical advance, it is natural to call the 21st century as the praxis time, because that's out to be rooted in the theoretical affirmation. We believe that this in 21st century, it is enough to have some theories and to theorize the media literacy education for all countries in the world. We have to take some action by making and providing a curriculum for the secondary school students. I am going to define and to explain more on every part of my speech. We need to train a generation with the humanity values, who sympathizes with people in suffer, those who use their ambition in resolving people's pain. We should try to train the type of generation whose insight will be in de-Westernising the communities, locally or internationally. Training such an egalitarian and altruistic generation should be functioned on the high school students who are going to manage themselves in communications with their societies and later managing the communities in close future. The critical media literacy seeks the path to justice, democracy, and training citizens in a world which is turning into a global and net era. This makes it necessary to teach our students critical and transformative pedagogy to get them ready to perceive the essential role they are going to play as justice followers and global citizens. It means and it appears that individuals should take part in all activities related to their lives to inspect and have a permanent surveillance on the national and international government's decision. This is very important, that we have to train all our students, all audiences, to have the surveillance on the government's decision through media literacy education, which develop moral and ethical behavior among students, as our students are going to be our future leaders. A lack of such a concrete body will hinder democracy, as individuals might be deprived of adequate information or adequate qualities to interpret information. Let me tell you that we believe we must move from theorizing the media literacy, that's enough, to action, as it is called the praxis period, which allows the media literacy centers across the world to plan a schedule in writing a globalized curriculum, which is not being affected by the westernization in media literacy. We have to educate our children with the media literacy mission, that is enlightening people with what the politicians, influencers, or ideologists and opinion leaders try to bias their mind. We must guide our children on awareness of media messages through media literacy and induce the critical thinking. My international team and I have been trying to write the cosmopolitan curriculum by holding a global campaign called Media Pro Global Campaign. Media Pro campaign, which could be applicable and not dependent to West approach in the countries across the world, as in my own country. To achieve our target, we have made our action plan, including our aims, objectives, missions, and vision as well. We have designed our methodology because you know that since we have not had any type of curriculum in media literacy, I mean actual and practical curriculum. So it is natural that we should not have any methodology in making such a curriculum for the other countries in the world. And let me tell you that our media literacy curriculum writing is moving forward well. We have held the Media Pro campaign for more than 8 months to design a cosmopolitan curriculum which enables our students in all countries to participate in democracy. Without an educated and informed and literate citizenry, strong democracy is impossible. Moreover, there are crucial links between literacy, democracy, empowerment, and social participation in politics and everyday life. Probably you may ask me what is our target group that we are focusing and we are working for. The target group that we are considering in our project is the high school students who learn to think critically by getting the skills of inquiry so that they learn to curb people's pains and difficulties, and they can assume people's concerns as their own considerations. It is our belief that we should bring the media literacy course inside the schools, among the students' schedule. To achieve our targets, we have been inviting the university professors, journalists, and media educators to contribute in our project. Okay, to do that, we have categorized our discussions, many more discussions we have been holding during these months, and we have reached to our final plan. We are planning to provide the media literacy curriculum in 10 categorizations, each of which is in the format of a book, or let me tell you, will be in the format of a book. Number one, this is the first category that my team and I are working on this point. It is called Media Literacy, Media Languages, Critical Thinking, and Basic Political Knowledge. Number two, Media Literacy and Dialogue Among Civilizations, Media Ethics, Culture, Human Rights, Democracy, and Peace. Number three, Citizen Journalism and Citizenship in the Digital Era. Number four, Media Literacy and the Media-Originated Sociology, the sociology which has been made by the media messages or media, let's say, content. Number five, Media Literacy and Media-Originated Psychology. Number six, Media Literacy and the Law, because all individuals in all communities, they should know about their own rights in the societies or in communities, specifically the students at school and in countries. Number seven, Media Literacy and Economics. These are the items that our lives every day is engaged with all these topics. Number eight, Media Literacy, Storytelling and Happiness. Especially we are focusing on the happiness because especially during these days, recently, we are not having any, the status quo in the countries in Middle East is not getting the happy situation, the condition of happiness. We are in lack of the happiness in the countries, in Middle East especially. Number 9, media literacy and sport games, because I am trying, as a sportsman, and myself am trying to introduce the sport games as the real media, not the media tools or media career. I am theorizing this point, and it will be done within a couple of weeks. And number 10, media literacy and environmental changes. We believe that combining the cultural studies with the critical pedagogy expands the notion of literacy to include different forms of media culture, information, communication technologies, and new media, as well as deepening the competency to critically analyze the relationships between media and audiences, information, capital, and power. We are going to conduct a path to justice. We are trying, actually, to democracy and training citizens in a world which is turning into a global and net era. We have to train our children in communities as the global citizens who care each other, who share the love between each other, respect the humanness, and avoid the hostility towards people from diverse nationalities. There must be the transformative pedagogy to let them feel their essential role in conducting their communities in peace and justice. Let me be in short that we humbly request every individual and organizations in media literacy to request their active support and participation to improve and improvise the media literacy curriculum globally, to empower our students with all the means to reside in the information society without being impaired by it. We have got a very good team of scholars, but we do need more individuals to complete the first volume of the media literacy curriculum to be practically used in the societies, which is going to be published, I believe, within the next 3 or 4 months. These are the things that we have done so far in my country and internationally. But if I may, I would like to introduce more in detail regarding to the condition and the situation of media literacy in my country, if I have some time, or otherwise I am not taking your time more.
Thank you, Ali Reza Bastani, for these a bit fresh perspectives on media literacy as well. You are also in the position of or in a role of not having a long tradition, but you are able to affect the future development, and I got an impression that this is also a personal mission for you, but you highlighted very well how the mission of media literacy is important in countries like yours, to make people see the importance of media literacy and its relevance, its connection to democratic development and maybe other beneficial social development. So thank you for that. I have one question. What do you think about Moha's idea of the cultural obstacles? That if you want to implement media literacy, you also have to take into account these cultural issues, and there are many cultural obstacles or hindrances on the way. Is this something that resonates with you and
Sure.
your country?
As indicated in my speech, it could be removed, okay? Any clashes of the culture or something by globalizations, and I have stated in my speech that we do need to have the dialogue among the civilizations. It is very important because it brings all nations together in one place, okay? To negotiate, to discuss friendly with each other, to make closer the culture and their whatever what that brings the human beings close to each other. So I think it was in the sixth topic of our making the curriculum writing that we do need to have all nations to be closer to each other by uh, giving them the dialogue. Let me tell you that the opportunity for dialogue among different civilizations. Okay, we believe that there should not be any minority. This is one of the objectives that we are working on. There should not be any terminologies like majority or a minority. Okay, then we are talking about the minority. It means that we are differentiating between people in the world. Even one human being in the world is a human being. He or she is not called a minority. So it goes through the other civilizations or nations in the world that okay, we should not care the nations in number, nor for their ideology, nor for their thinking, whatever in this field. I have invented a word, a term, the humanness, not human being. Okay? Whatever happens in the world has been done by the human being. But we do need to respect the humanness.
These are good closing words, not to differentiate, but to see it as unified. Thank you so much, Alireza Vastani. And now we are running out of time, so we have to rush and go further to Morocco. And we have Fouad Boulaid, who is our next speaker, and he will tell us about a case study conducted on media literacy together with Mohamed Mliles. In Morocco, and I'll let you present yourself. Fouad, the screen is yours. We can see your presentation, but it's not in the presentation mode. Maybe it doesn't matter. But we can see it.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, because I could not hear you at the beginning. Okay, now I'd like to share my screen. Let me express first my pleasure to be among you from Morocco. Jackie Kola. Okay, nice to meet you. I'm pleased also to share this screen with let me see here. Is it shared? Yeah, it is. Okay, I'm pleased also to share with Maha and Professor Ali from Emirate and Iran. Nice to meet you, and I'm pleased to share this study, which was done along with Dr. Mohamed Mlilis, who is sick today. He could not be with us presenting, but he's there just listening. Well, this is the presentation, Media Literacy and Education in Morocco, Impediments and Implementation. Start by a short definition of just to recapitulate and reminding the audience of media is a general term that stands for television, radio, newspaper, considered as a whole and as ways of entertaining or spreading news or information to a large number of people. Another definition, media aim to inform, influence, entertain, educate, develop attitudes, enhance cultures, and literacy means anyone that can really read and write in a language clearly. Media literacy then stands for the fact that it helps to media literate who can think critically about what they can see, hear, and read in books, newspapers, magazines, television, radio, movies, music, advertising, video games, and the internet, and the new emerging technologies. Another definition of media literacy is that it is an education that refers to activities that aim at enhancing media skills and competencies among media audience. It is an ability that helps learners to access, analyze, evaluate, create, and act upon media messages. And it is the desired outcome of media education activities in media. That are some advocates of media messages for principal cultural analysis. We have, let's say, gathered these advocates into 5 components. Media messages are constructed and they are representations of reality with embedded values and views, and each form of media uses a unique set of rules to construct messages. Individuals interpret media messages and create their own media based on personal experience. Media are driven by profit within economic and political contexts. Internationally, media starts at Western countries. It has begun being described and defined by UNESCO as part of an initiative that began in 1982 with the conference in Grunwald in Poland and continued with the conferences in Toulouse and Vienna and Seville. In the 20th century, European countries have been using media education in relation to media literacy is an attempt to include and expand digital literacy to develop the information society and to narrow the digital divide. As for the Arab region, many initiatives have been taken to support media literacy education. Excuse me, can you mute your mics? In Morocco, the presence of a strong institutional is to promote the integration of ICT in education in Morocco is underlined in the education and training charter. So what is the rationale behind this? There is a problem. Media literacy is becoming increasingly important in today's society, equipping students with the skills they need to be smart consumers of information and shape them into strong digital citizens. So Moroccan government, within what we call the emergency plan of education, launched a project aiming at encouraging both teachers and students to better discern their use of media information and communication. And there is an enormous lack of theoretical as well as descriptive work. Aim of this study, to what extent media literacy is implemented in Morocco based on primary and secondary school students' awareness, teachers' perspectives, and the availability of media literacy rhetoric in textbooks. Research questions of this study. Research question number 1, what attitudes do middle school students hold towards media literacy? 2, how do middle and secondary school teachers perceive media literacy within the Moroccan educational system? 3, to what extent do textbooks include media literacy? Methods, we have been administered to students and teachers of primary, secondary, and high school, and even some students from the university. And then these contents analysis from some textbooks. Here is some of the results I can share with you. Demographic data. We have been collecting 390 female students and 310 male students. Teachers, 25 female and 15 male teachers teaching Arabic, French, and English, Arabic and French primary and secondary, and Arabic and French and English at high school. And this is some of the numbers that we collected. If you can see, it's about 84% of students who are aware of the media literacy and its, let's say, implication, its role and its importance in life. And even some teachers are aware, but the problem is that we have very limited and of textbooks including and dealing with media literacy and even teaching in the curriculum. So there is what we call a lack of media literacy since childhood. Unlike university, we have been starting teaching media literacy, but normally it has to be done since primary K-12. That's what we call it. And even the integration of some what we call the concerning teachers, they appreciate and they are with including media literacy. So here is some of samples of the textbooks from primary schools, Arabic and French. So rarely that we have what we call fair link to some description of cell phones, of journalism day, and what we call some negative aspects of the computer. Here are some Arabic and French textbooks at the secondary school, which initiate students to some images, but there is a lack of what we call media literacy. Concerning high school, these are the three sample books or textbooks that are taught within the high school. So it's where we have some examples of science and technology, sending and writing emails, mass media, listening to radio, some of these new technologies, science, cell phones again, but not just what we call theory of media literacy, even with the baccalaureate. So the implication of these results of the study is just the study joins the weaknesses mentioned in 2019 on the challenges of incorporating and developing media literacy in the Moroccan educational system. Okay, so we need to raise students' awareness and provide adequate school support, improve teachers' professional development, and efficient classroom practices. So eventually, this study is an attempt to provide a starting point to the quantitative, the assessment and evaluation of media literacy in the Moroccan context, and make a strong call, a wake-up call for the implementation of the field within Moroccan educational schools. Some of the recommendations: media education authorities should introduce media literacy in the curriculum, developing media literacy competence, should dedicate resources to the training of teachers. Concerning research, we need to develop more systematic research into media literacy. Implementing technologies must be accompanied by research. And for the general public, media literacy must target the children and their families, trigger the awareness on the safe and appropriate use of media and ICT. Media literacy should be tailored specific to each group to better serve its interests and create high quality media service and content. As a conclusion, now it is high time that we had incorporated media literacy in education, and leadership should target short-term objectives in integrating media literacy as a component of the curriculum. These are some of the references And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Foyad. And these slides are, of course, to be seen on the website as well. I guess these dovetailed quite well with what has been said before, complementing our picture of the Arab world and media literacy. It was interesting to know also about the textbooks. So you were talking about the lack of media literacy, as did the other speakers as well, and we have been talking about the weaknesses. But how would you assess what has been the most positive thing or progress that has happened in Morocco during the past years in the scene of media literacy?
Well, the positive thing is that the government is aware, and it has been included in the charter of, let's say, the new, what we call the educational strategic plan, that media literacy is a must to be included at school. Also, students are aware, and are what we call they are the Z generation. They are not only aware, but they are competent in the use of technologies and media. But the problem is that they need to be accompanied by, let's say, the teachers who are also aware and they are eager to work with media. So the students are to be accompanied by teachers and parents as well, who should be, let's say, aware and sensitized to the importance and the risk of media and how to use, as for example, what has been mentioned by Maha from Emirate, that they need to know how to use and not to abuse of these media. So nowadays, even some, let's say, new researchers and are aware, and they are they need they are eager to work on media research to find out why we are, let's say, some of the students are lagging behind, though we are within this new wave, within this new technological apps, but there is a lack of critical media, how to analyze and to produce and regenerate new theories from the media. We should not be just consumers of, we need to be what we call critical thinkers, at the same time reproducers of, and why not producing new theories throughout the media.
Thank you. Does anyone from the audience have a question? If not, I guess it's time to wrap up. Thank you so much, Fuad. And even this webinar you will be able to watch afterwards on the web page, and all the other webinar series will be there as well. I'd just like to say that our next webinar will deal with media literacy on the African continent, and in attachment to that webinar we will also launch a new digital platform which is called Afromedia Network, and it's a digital community platform for researchers, media researchers in the sub-Saharan Africa, and it's intended to be a sister platform for the Nordic Nord Media Network. This is a collaboration between 4 partner universities and Nordicom, one in Norway, one in Uganda, one in Rwanda, and one in South Africa. So I hope we will meet each other there as well. This was it for today, and great thanks to all speakers and all of you who were listening. Thank you for being with us today. It was nice to have you here, and I hope we'll see each other again next month and become happier with the means of media literacy, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.